Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Joe DeBay, CEO of Eden Workplace, to discuss a survey the company did in partnership with Wakefield Research on employee sentiment for the return now a year into COVID. Joe, it's great to see you again. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Yes, thank you, Jill. Nice to see you again as well.
And Joe, despite variations in workers' expectations about how to return to the office, they want to go back in some capacity. Tell us about the key findings.
Yeah, absolutely. So we recently commissioned a survey from partnering with Wakefield Research, primary provider of different surveys for the public. And the key finding that was really interesting is that 85% of knowledge workers want to go back to the office. It's a really meaningful percentage. People do want to go back in a more flexible way. It wasn't 85% want to go back 5 days a week, but it's 85% do wish to go back with a regular cadence. What was really interesting that we saw was that it's even higher for non-white respondents, as well as earlier in career, so younger respondents. So Gen Z, millennials, it's even higher than 85%.
What is the primary reason for returning to work?
Yeah, so people are very excited to return to the office for a couple reasons. The biggest one that was by far the most cited was socializing with their colleagues. People miss people. It's something that's deeply hardwired into us. It's interesting. We actually have, even at our company, it's just a microcosm of this. We have some folks who, on their what we call their Edenversary, on their anniversary, we ask them what's the favorite moment they've had at the company, and we've now been doing this. And the folks who have joined since the pandemic begun and have just known remote, they tend to not be able to think of the specific moment. It's hard to think of the moment on a Zoom call that was your favorite of the year, whereas those who have much more in-person experience tend to think of those moments together. And this is really showing up more broadly in the survey results. People want to spend time with their peers. They want to build relationships, especially earlier career individuals.
I was going to say it makes sense for Gen Z in those first, in their first or second stages of the career, because they really don't understand what culture is like outside of school or something that's a little bit more structured. So I can imagine just how challenging it is, especially coming onto new teams and trying to insert your voice and make impact when you really don't know people from a physical perspective. And speaking of physical perspective, Joe, will there be a social stigma against colleagues who refuse to get vaccinated?
Yes, so that was something that did show up in the results. It was very interesting. We saw sort of two themes when it came to safety and COVID. One is people really do want their colleagues to be vaccinated. So broadly speaking, they want their colleagues to be vaccinated. And there was even, I would call a significant minority of folks who would actually want some sort of consequence if someone shows up and isn't vaccinated. They either want to create a social stigma, they want the person to be stigmatized in some way, or they might even want job consequences, like being demoted or fired. So there's a really strong desire to see people become vaccinated before they return. That being said, I would condition that with the fact that we did do the survey, just recently. And I think when you fast forward 3 months and we're less in an environment of fear and more in an environment of hope, and the case counts go from being really material to, pretty small, I think you're probably going to see different results on that particular question. We also saw folks suggest that, what they want to see their employer provide in the office is they want to see hand sanitizer, they want to have masks available. And so it was clear that there's an expectation that they're going to be able to return safely.
And how are employees going to have to rethink their approach to traditional in-house proceedings in order to execute on this transition? It's one thing, Joe, when we all had to go home March 12th, March 13th to our own respective settings. But once you have tens of thousands of people, millions of people in the case of Manhattan, coming back into the city, that's a bigger undertaking, a bigger transition than us respectively going to our homes.
Yeah, absolutely. People are, in the survey, we're pretty explicit. They anticipate, certainly different types of preventative items like the hand sanitizer and masks, but also there's this new expectation for flexibility in the workplace, and that brings with the need for tools. So Eden Workplace, for instance, we create software that enables hybrid offices to be set up, so people can come in and book a certain day of the week that they're going to come into the office, and have concepts such as neighborhoods where everyone on the finance team can sit together. And so I think it's not just our company. More broadly, there's an ecosystem being built right now around enabling people to return to the office in a more flexible way and creating tools that that would help that outcome. And we also, I think, what we're hearing from our clients consistently is that they need to create an environment that's more inclusive. And so there's an interesting new challenge around setting up meetings in conference rooms so that people in person, as well as those joining, via Zoom and other sorts of comparable software solutions, are able to have a somewhat seamless experience, because you don't want to create the outcome of different tiers of workers, those who are more in the know and those who feel more marginalized.
That's a really great point, Joe. We certainly saw that pre-pandemic. There definitely was a significant difference with those at the table versus those that were remote. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. Joe, as always, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you, Jill.